Good evening, good day, and welcome to MoreYoga Connection Cafe. My name is Yvonne O'Garro, and I am a MoreYoga restorative and hatha yoga teacher. So this is called Yoga Journeys, and this was created on the back of the Black Lives Matters protest last year, when Connection Cafe was created because of the lockdown and a way to connect. And then when the Black Lives Matters protest happened for George Floyd's killing, MoreYoga wanted a platform, a space for yogis of colour to come. And I was asked to create something, and I decided to create this space to amplify the voices of yogis of colour. So I came up with the idea of asking the same 10 questions of all yogis, but what is gorgeous is all the answers are beautifully different. So today I have the absolute pleasure of inviting and hearing the story of my friend and fellow yogi, Valerie Teh. Welcome, Valerie.
Hi, Yvonne. Thanks so much for inviting me to Connection Cafe tonight.
You are very, very, very welcome. So how are you?
I'm so well, thank you. So here in the UK, we've had our May bank holiday weekend,
The first of two.
and I'm delighted to say that I put the boundary in for myself and took the time away from teaching, away from giving to fill up my own cup. So I'm
Amazing.
very
Well done,
well.
you. That's impressive. Well done, you. And
It's
do you
got
feel
to be
better
done.
for it?
110%. Really, I'm glowing from the inside. And I think it's so important. I think most of the time when we're holding space for other people, they assume that we're the ones that are sort of always looking after ourselves. And the truth, as I'm sure you know from your network as well, is completely the opposite, where we're often burnt out, stressed, and more exhausted than the
Mm.
people coming into the rooms. So very grateful for this time.
No, I'm inspired. You've inspired me. You've inspired me. That's great to hear. And so you've got the second bank holiday to look forward to. Will you do the same then?
I hope so. I think everything is opening up, but
Yes. Yeah.
still important to put the boundaries in. Hey.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So before I launch into the yoga journeys questions, I like you, guest of honor tonight, to introduce yourself how you would like to be introduced, like you were meeting somebody in the lift. You know that 30-second lift pitch. I won't time you, but you have
Thank goodness.
introduce yourself as you would like to be introduced.
So, in this context, my name is Valerie Teh. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a self care and well being facilitator. And I like to describe myself that way because I have issues with the word teacher. I also don't always feel comfortable calling myself a yogi. And I have worked for a while now to come up with self care and well-being facilitator
Like
and
it.
space holder that I feel describes what I
Like it.
do, but doesn't carry
Mm.
the baggage of what teacher
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
brings
yeah.
with it as well.
I hear you. I hear you. No, I like that. I like that very much. Okay.
And it's also self-care rather than specific strands and disciplines of yoga, because again, I think yoga as a word in the Western wellness industry has some connotations that, again, I'm not so comfortable with.
Hmm.
And a lot of the work that I try and share blends and is inspired very much by yoga, by breathing patterns, by some of the pranayama traditions, but it also draws from sort of free fluid somatic movement,
Mm.
draws from TRE, tension release, it draws from Qigong, um, and it's all kind of, I feel like I'm more sort of a generalist in that sense. I haven't dedicated my journey so far into one specific discipline just because I, like everyone else, find that I need to cherry pick depending on what I
Yes.
need, where my energy levels are at, where my challenges are at. And there's not one method that I have encountered yet that is sort of the cure all that a
Mm.
lot of people claim their methods are.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. So you ready to delve into the yoga journeys questions?
Yes, please. I'm excited.
Yay! Okay, so honoring our ancestors, please share with us your family lineage.
So, my family and ancestors are from the Chinese diaspora, in the sense that my father's ancestors are Chinese by blood, but they migrated over to the islands of Malaysia a couple of generations back. And similarly for my mother, they sort of emigrated, mother's side of the family, they emigrated from various parts of southeastern China into Hong Kong.
Mm,
And so ethnically I am Chinese, but I was born in Malaysia. My
okay.
father was Malaysian Chinese. My mum is a Hong Konger, and yeah, it's complicated. I have a funny relationship with the question, where are you from? And I really like
Mm,
how you approached it in this setting, because I normally hate answering that question. I feel like when someone asks you where you're from, it's so that they can latch onto, oh, okay, you're Chinese. Chinese food is my
yeah,
favorite. I'm
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah, yeah,
content, I
yeah,
can't.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I'm sure, hearing back some of the other yoga journeys as well, it's
yeah.
a loaded question, let's
It's a
say.
loaded question, one we've learnt to navigate as, who we are. But I hear you. So thank you for sharing. And I hope, it wasn't as difficult tonight.
Definitely not. And
Cool.
I grew up in the UK from the age of 10, so I feel like I have a very blended heritage, in the sense
Mm,
that I draw a lot from my ethnic roots and from my ancestral roots, but I also draw a lot from being a product of someone who grew up in the UK, in London, in
yes.
the noughties and in the tens, where I spent
Right.
most of my adult life. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you got a lot to draw from.
it's a
Quite a nice.
melting pot.
That's what I was just about to say, that a nice melting pot to create. Love it. Okay. So when, where, and with whom was your first yoga class?
So I had to think quite hard about this one, because I think my very first yoga class took place when I was probably 12 or 13 in the early thousands, and it was with the girlfriend of one of my cousins. So I didn't get to answering in my earlier question about my lineage. My mother is one of 10.
Oh,
So I come
wow.
from a very
Wow.
large clan.
Mm.
Between my mum and dad's side of the family, I have 30 first cousins. I counted this quite a while back. Yes, it's a big family.
Wow.
And it just so happens that one of my cousins, who also lived in London when I was growing up, his girlfriend in the early thousands was a yoga practitioner, yoga teacher.
Mm.
She ran community classes in Southeast London, and my mum and I went to support her classes. And I remember for a few months in sort of the sort of high school years, I would go to
Mm.
this class with my mum and be doing sort of animal inspired poses and breathing patterns, and it was great fun to do something together. My mum,
Mm.
being not the most physically fit person, I think she'd be all right with me saying that. And it wasn't ballet, it wasn't gymnastics, it was just something accessible that we could do together. And
Mm.
we'd also practice the moves at home together as well, so
Okay, that's
it
excellent.
was a great bonding experience as
Mm.
teenagers,
Mm.
to be able to
Lovely.
do that with her and also support a family member's
Mm.
partner in that way.
Yeah.
But I never sort of seriously took it up. It didn't become a significant part of my life until quite a bit later on.
Okay. So how big was the gap from, so I suppose it moves into the next question. When did you realize you wanted to teach? Because this you said was early thousands, and then you sort of gave it up, you didn't maintain it. When did you pick it up again to get into the teacher training, or the practitioner, we'll call it for you?
Well, so I'm absolutely an accidental well-being practitioner, in the sense that I don't think there was ever a point I genuinely thought this is going to be my career. And I think for so many of us that it's the way it goes.
Mm.
You start on a very personal journey, and somehow before you know it, you end up teaching a full roster of classes. classes. Yeah.
I hear you.
Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think I kept up a very casual relationship with yoga, yoga asana, yoga poses, and
Hmm.
throughout my teens and in my university years. It was just something I did as part of a movement program that was quite varied, but it was only until I'd say 26, I think it was, yeah, 2016, back end of 2016, when my father was very unwell. He was in Shanghai and he was hospitalized with heart trouble, basically. And I had just come off a sabbatical with my then partner, then boyfriend, and we moved to Shanghai from New Zealand, where we'd
Hmm.
been on our time off together. And just every benefit that I had from the sabbatical was wiped clean because of the draining
Mm.
nature of kind of caring for someone, but also um, we were in a very foreign, it was a very foreign place,
Mm.
even though culture, even though by heritage, sort of, I'm Chinese, I've never lived in mainland China. I've never lived in a city that is 3 times the size of London.
Wow.
It's
Mm.
huge and just, I felt very isolated. And the only place that I really found some comfort was I discovered an aerial yoga class
Oh, wow.
in
Wow.
Shanghai that I could hire a bike and cycle 20 minutes from the hospital once a week to this
Mm.
studio. And it was
Mm.
just pure serendipity. The teacher I loved, her name's Barbara, and she just held this beautiful space and being supported by this piece of silk in
Mm.
union with breath and body was, the only thing I would say that really supported me through
Yeah,
this
because it must have
experience.
been quite a transition if you've had this, sabbatical in New Zealand and all that went with that, and then to hear your dad's not well, then you have to go and, it's not easy, I know, seeing a parent, declining. Um,
Definitely, he was young. He wasn't 60, he was 57 at the time.
wow, really? Wow, I'm
And
sorry
he
to hear.
was in and out of hospital for over a year and a half. And
Wow. Mm.
we didn't know, obviously, at the time, it was an emergency situation. I flew up there in the middle of the night with my mum the first time, and
Mm.
um, it just sort of became this life that we hadn't planned. And mum was based in Hong Kong, and my partner and I were in Shanghai, sort of on and off as much as our mental healths could handle it, really, together.
Mm.
But no, so I digress. This
Mm.
yoga class, this
Mm.
aerial yoga
Was there
class
to hold you?
was
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
really. And
Absolutely.
it wasn't long. I would say it was maybe a couple of months that my teacher and the friends I started to make in this studio community started encouraging me to kind of look into training to
Really?
become a space
Wow.
holder, because they were
Okay.
saying, you've benefited so much from this, you know, would you consider taking the training so you can cover for us and
Oh,
give back a
wow.
little bit? And, even if it was for a corporate reason from their part, I
Mm.
really felt the call at the time to just say, if I
Mm.
can support one person the way that this class has been able to support me, I feel
Mm.
like paying that forward is just a small piece of grace. So I did. I took the training, and I actually couldn't finish it at the time with my cohort because my father had an emergency. So I think on the final day of my training, I just called into my teacher and said, I can't be here today. Let me know when you next run the course and I'll finish it. And to her
Mm.
credit, her name was Holly Coles. She ran a separate day for me many, many months later
Oh,
when I was in a
wow.
better place so that I could finish the training and sort of
Oh,
start
that's
my
great.
yoga teacher journey there.
That's great to hear. Great to hear. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Valerie. That's yeah, the power and the strength of the yoga practice. So you kind of answered that as well, where the teacher training was. So it was in Hong Kong.
It was in Shanghai,
Shanghai, beg your
actually.
pardon, Shanghai.
No
Okay.
problem. But I
What
don't
year was
see it.
that?
It was 20, I think
16.
I finished it in 2017, but I
Right.
started it in 2016 because of the health incident with my dad. But I
Okay.
wouldn't say that was my first yoga teacher training. It was certified by a, registered yoga school with Yoga Alliance, but
Hmm.
I would say I only took a teacher training my first 200 hours when after my dad passed. So he passed in March 2018.
Hmm.
And I think in a blind sort of, yeah, flurry of grief, I think, or cloud of grief. I didn't really know what to
Mm,
do at the time. I'd just come
mm,
back to the UK. And I was sat in Trioga in Camden and having a cup of tea in between a class, probably. And I just saw a poster that said yoga for stress, anxiety, and depression, 200-hour teacher training. And I just thought, this speaks to me because at the
mm,
time I was dealing
mm.
with stress, depression, and anxiety
Yeah,
rolled into
yeah, yeah,
one
yeah,
with
yeah.
grief sort of sprinkled in all the way through. And it was definitely not for anyone else, but for me. And I had
Mm,
the support of my partner and my mum, who said, this seems like a really good idea for you to channel what you're feeling into something that might help you a little
absolutely.
bit further on. And again, I had no intention of becoming a teacher at that point. I just wanted to survive day by
Yeah,
day. It was
yeah.
like that.
Mm,
And doing this teacher training for me, I met Max Strom, who was running this course, and
amazing.
he is still today my mentor. And I am so, so grateful that my path aligned with his,
Mm.
because that was the second time he'd done a teacher training in London, and I don't think he's done too many more since then.
Oh, wow, excellent. Okay, okay.
And I think he saw the voice and the purpose that I had when I couldn't. And it sounds really
Mm,
cheesy, but
mm.
it really
No,
was the
it doesn't
way.
sound cheesy. Sometimes people can see in you what you have no clue is there. And also, you were still grieving. You were still going through a lot anyway. So, clearly you wouldn't have seen certain stuff.
Absolutely. And I'm so, so grateful that he sort of encouraged me to get teaching. And at the time, I wasn't 200-hour mat yoga certified, but I was aerial yoga certified. So I
Mm,
started teaching aerial yoga in London
amazing.
fast. And then as soon as I graduated, he was very kind and wrote me many recommendations and set me on my path in London
Amazing.
on the mat.
Amazing. Wow. Amazing. So, can you recall from both trainings how many people were on the trainings and how many people of color were on the trainings, if you can recall?
So for aerial yoga, because I was in Shanghai, it was probably a group of 7 or 8, and I would say it was half and half Chinese and Caucasian. So it was a English teacher training run by an Australian teacher,
Okay.
but there were people like me, effectively Chinese people who could speak English because it was an
Mm,
English
mm.
studio, and then expatriates who were
Yes.
living in
Yeah,
Shanghai
yeah,
who
yeah.
also were
Working.
part
Yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah.
community.
Yeah. Right.
There were no men and there were no women, I would say,
Okay.
past a certain age or past a certain size. So, in terms of diversity, I feel like racially it was diverse,
Okay.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
not so inclusive in other ways.
Yeah. Not by sex
No.
or,
And
yeah.
flexibility and
Yeah.
size.
Okay. Okay. And then the training with Max Strong.
So Max's training, I was thinking about this in preparation for the interview. Because of the way that he doesn't focus on, let's call them acrobatic asanas, it drew a very physically diverse crowd. The
Okay.
age diversity was great.
Mm.
And I think out of a cohort of around 20 to 25, there were
Mm.
five, including myself, people of color.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
it was a mix. It wasn't just sort of all one group. It
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah. Okay.
peppered throughout, and it was great. Looking back at it, I thought it was a very good, diverse group of people. It was the most diverse group of students I'd ever seen in a tri yoga class setting,
Mm, mm.
outside of Interaxis, which is the type of practice that he offers.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Okay. That's kind of consistent with most of the journeys where, it's a smaller number, but yeah, some diverse. I think my TT had about 7, and it's interesting you say about the age diversity as well, because on my TT there was like an age diversity. We weren't all under a certain age. In fact, lots of us were over a certain age. So yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. So now we move on to the highs and lows of the wellness industry. So if you have any to share, and it's open question, whatever you want to share, I ask you to start with the lows and then end on any highs if you have any. So
Okay.
over to you, the lows and highs of the wellness industry.
So firstly, this is a huge question.
It's
I'm
a
just going to
huge question, I
caveat
know.
that, and we're probably not going to cover off everything.
No, but it's what comes to your mind. It's like, what's your priorities there?
So, in preparation, because I was thinking about this particular question before our chat tonight,
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 main lows that I wanted to share. And the
Mm-hmm.
first, I think I covered at the very beginning, where we talked about people who end up working in this industry, in the well-being industry, end up actually being the ones who are incredibly stressed,
Yeah.
incredibly burnt out, not well looked after. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that we're mostly freelancers. And when you work under a studio, you're at their mercy really in terms of scheduling. They have to do what they have to do to make their business financially viable, which typically means you don't get 3 classes back to back. You end up traveling, and you don't
Yes.
get paid for the time you travel,
Of
and you don't
course.
get paid
Yeah.
to travel either.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're expected to arrive. I've been asked to arrive up to 45 minutes before a class and finish and stay another half an hour to speak to people
Wow.
afterwards.
Wow. That's a whole extra hour.
More than that. And then
Yeah.
you've got to factor in the travel
They
and the
travel
buffer
exactly.
time in
Yeah. Yeah.
case your tube is delayed or your train is cancelled. And then
Mm.
you've got the time to set up aerial yoga, especially, or yin yoga, when there's
Yes, of
lots of
course.
props involved. It takes
Yeah.
you another 15 minutes. So,
Yeah.
by the time you slice it and dice it, it's nowhere near a minimum wage or a
No.
living wage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm acutely aware of my financial privilege, which means that I'm able to do this and accept a non-living wage and still find other sources of income.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the problem is a lot of people go into this industry, they take on the trainings up front, and you're paying for that up front with no
Mm.
guarantee of income. And even when you do get on the schedules, you still have to keep hustling. Your classes get cancelled
Yeah. The
at the
hustle is
last minute.
real. Mm.
And I feel like the industry preys on the goodwill of the people who are in it a lot of the times, where they know that you want to be there. They know that you really want to sort of have a space to share your offering, and
Mm.
you'll say and do whatever it needs to be to get in through the door. And I feel like, yeah, for the first, I'd say 18 months of my yoga facilitating career, I took on lots of jobs that were terrible and did a lot of free labor. And it's
Mm.
only been more recently that I found the confidence to actually push back. And for every person that says no, I won't teach for less than X, there's someone else who's just finished a YTT that's like, oh, I'll do it for £5, or I'll do it for free, or I'll do it in
Mm.
exchange for exposure. And
But hopefully, as you say, you found that voice, the ability to say no. Hopefully, more and more have that confidence, and especially when stuff like this. You're recording this video. It might, it's going to go out. More yoga, my YouTube, your YouTube. People, how the internet works, and it might inspire somebody else. They watch it, hear it. So
I
somebody
really
else says
hope
no,
so.
and somebody else says no, and before you know it, it's not so easy to get away with that anymore. We live in hope, we live in hope.
Definitely. And I think, yeah, that's one of the lows in working in the wellness industry in my experience, and also talking to my community of fellow facilitators, trainers, practitioners, is that yeah, you're not particularly well looked after. And it therefore means that you either have to really find ways of generating income left, right, and center, or you only do this if you have the financial security from other sources of wealth and income to do so. And it means that you're cutting out sectors of society that would be able to do an amazing job of supporting their communities, but aren't able to do so because you're not looked after
That's right.
as a
Yeah.
well-being professional. So I guess, yeah, that, I mean, one hope is that that will continue to shift, and as
Yes.
more of us feel more open about talking about
Mm,
taboo topics like pay and contracts and, walking
definitely.
away from studios and
Definitely.
organizations, but also naming the ones that are sort of making positive movements in this area so that we all kind of know who to support.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. What was your
And
other low?
my other low is actually how a lot of people and businesses in the wellness industry, I feel, add to trauma and add to someone's troubles more than actually take away, even though at the heart of the business, we're all in this to sort of support the health and well-being of others.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's indirect, sometimes it's very deliberate. And I'll elaborate in the sense that, I've personally seen a lot of studio feeds and teacher feeds and the way they advertise promote very unhealthy ideals of beauty, ideas of health, you know, and, you're potentially conditioning people coming in through your doors with very, very unrealistic, unaccessible ideals of what, you ought to be like in order to be
Mm, mm,
healthy or
mm.
desirable or
Yeah, yeah,
whole.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't like that, inadvertently, a lot of times these spaces and facilitators are adding layers of trauma to people who actually need the exact opposite.
Opposite, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
deliberately as well. I mean, I've never been in a situation like this before, but I've spoken to other teachers, as well as other sort of clients and students who have felt like they've been taken advantage of by a particular retreat or a studio or a teacher training where, you know, they sort of rip you open, but then it's in their interest financially to keep you
Raw.
raw
Mm,
and
mm.
suboptimal, so you have to keep going back and back and back.
And
And
buying the product or buying the next
absolutely.
thing to top you up, to make you feel better.
And I've not
Yeah. Or
experienced
partly
this,
better.
definitely, just enough to keep you coming back for
The
more.
next one.
Yeah. I won't name them, but I've been to one or two workshops where I felt that way, where it's sort of, I'm just going to drip feed you enough to so that you feel a little bit worse, but then you see the glimmer of hope where you might get a little bit better if you do more of my trainings or if you stuff.
Wow. Wow.
But I actually experienced that the most with a psychiatrist. So when I was going through my very poor mental health phase, when I was supporting my father in Shanghai, I
Mhm.
was seeing a psychiatrist based in Hong Kong. So because I used to sort of fly between the two places,
Mhm.
and she was, looking back now, I mean, it just was the worst thing for me personally, in the sense that I would go and see her, I would talk, she would open me up, and then she'd just prescribe me these pills and send me away. And then, say, when's your next appointment? She'd only give me the number of pills between the
The
two
next point to
sessions.
get you to the next session.
Yeah, and it was very much exactly as we just talked about. You get enough, but you have to keep coming back, and you just feel like you're on this treadmill where like you're stuck on a loop. And looking back at it now with my knowledge, it just felt so disempowering. It was just
Mm,
sort of, you have to rely on me and these pills in order to feel okay and
mm,
act and behave in a way that's socially acceptable, when actually, after the conclusion of my 200 hours with Max, between that and cognitive behavioral therapy, which I did in the UK with the NHS,
mhm, mhm.
and a variation of the techniques that I'd picked up from Max and all the reading and further self-development I'd done. I think
Mm-hmm.
6 months after that, I started tapering off all the medication with the support of a
Excellent.
GP, and I've
Mm,
never looked back.
great. Good for
And it's
you.
and it's one of those things where I wish people, healthcare and well-being professionals recognize their limitations or realize that what they're doing is potentially keeping you from feeling empowered and able to look after yourself
Mm,
because it's not in their financial benefit if you do so,
yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah.
really pretty screwed up, Yvonne. I will.
Yeah, definitely. But, thankfully you found that strength to make it through, And again, it's another inspiring thing if someone can watch or in conversation people hear that, if you're willing to share. It's sometimes people's sharing of stories helps people be inspired and, go down the right path. Takes
Well,
time, I know, but, slowly, slowly.
But I think the frustrating thing was at that time, that was to me the right thing to do. The right thing to do when I was struggling was to see a medical professional.
Of course. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
I was doing the right thing for myself. I
Mm,
really, really did. My
mm,
GP thought I was doing the right thing for myself. My support network, sort of my family, my friends, they were all saying, great, you're getting the help that you
mm,
need. And actually, it really wasn't the help that I needed. And at no point did
mm.
anyone say, actually, whoa, maybe this isn't the best thing for you.
Or maybe it was the practitioner. So if you'd had the right practitioner, who knows? So it probably was the right thing. But unfortunately, sometimes it's the wrong specific person or the wrong individual.
And one of Max's sayings is about how sort of you can have the right medicine in front of you, but if it's not the right time, it does nothing. I mean,
Ah, yes.
when you
Yeah.
have a migraine, taking ibuprofen helps.
Mm,
When you don't have a migraine, taking
it doesn't.
ibuprofen on an empty
Yeah,
stomach gives you stomach ulcers and holes.
exactly. Yeah, that's a great analogy. Like that. Like that. Okay.
And yeah, so for me, it wasn't the right medicine and it definitely wasn't at the right time. But it's not
No.
to say that it can't help someone else. It's
Mm,
just that
mm, mm. It's a
I feel
combination.
definitely, and
Mm.
it links to sort of my wish for the health and wellness industry as a whole is, if you're not right for someone to actually say so. I mean, how many people do you know have been turned down for a workshop or a teacher training because, oh, actually, you don't sound quite right on your application form for this.
Yeah.
I recommend you to this instead.
Yes.
I've never
Mm.
heard that happening
No.
before. Ever,
No.
ever, ever.
No.
But
No.
imagine what that would be like, though, if
Yeah.
we
Exactly.
actually were
Signposted to
responsible.
something else. Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. So, do you have any highs?
Um, Overarching high for me is definitely helping people help themselves. That's
Right. Mm.
really the
Mm.
ethos for me from day one,
Yeah.
which is I'm not here to help you or solve your problems. I'm here to share some
Facilitate.
tools
Mm.
and some tips that I've encountered in my own journey, um, and teachings that I've been lucky enough to glean from trainers, practitioners, masters, and pass them on so
Mm.
that you might be able to help yourself. I never want to be the person helping someone. I want to empower you to find what works for you. And
Absolutely.
that's the absolute high for me is when you meet other people like that who say, this really helped me, maybe it can help you too, and I wish
Mm.
you the best of luck. Um, and I'm here to give you things that you can do for yourself, changes that you can make for yourself, practices that you can do from your own body, no props, no nothing else, just you, your body, and really coming back to what it is that is best for you in this moment. That's the high, is seeing people who really think that they are sort of at rock bottom and they have nothing
Mm.
else, because I was there, and finding the path and finding your way through.
Yeah.
That's the high, to see people really, really
Yeah.
transform.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah. I really respect that. It is. There's something very special about that, isn't there?
Absolutely. And
Mm,
you might only see this person once, you might never see them again. But
mm,
in this beautiful age
mm.
of social media, sometimes out of the blue, I get a message from someone that I met a few years ago who came to one class that I taught at one
That's right.
studio,
That's right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they'll just say, that was the thing that inspired me to do this, or that was the moment that really sparked me to kind of
Mm,
check in with that. And it's really, really helped me since. And London
wonderful.
being such a big place, I do
Mm,
occasionally run into people that have been to my sessions before and I don't remember them. They look at me and they're
mm.
like, "Where do I know you from? Oh my gosh, I went to your breathwork class once and it was my day off and this was my absolute treat and I felt so much better afterwards." And I'm just thinking, this is magic sort of happening.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I could have gone my whole life without running into this person again, but
Mm.
I
But
think
it's meant to
that's
be. It's like it's probably that little reminder to say, this is why you're on the path, because you're making the difference that you talked about. You're helping people help themselves. You don't always know it, but here's somebody from the past just to remind you that it's not always right here, right now. you know so that's lovely, to a lovely reminder, I think. So
definitely, and it makes it worth a lot of the
mm,
crap, if
yeah,
I'm allowed to use
absolutely.
that word.
Now use whatever words you want. It's your journey, your conversation. So what's got you through each of the lockdowns, and have they been different for you? We're now into lockdown 3, although yes, it's easing, but how have you managed with the lockdowns? What's it been like for you?
I think the first stage of the lockdown, like a lot of others, where we had to migrate the way that we work and the way that we connect and communicate, and for us as well, the way that we, make an income and reach others,
mm,
had to
mm,
change quite drastically. And I will say, finding creative ways to stay in connection with people has definitely been one of the sort of ways that I've been able to get through lockdown. I definitely
mm,
couldn't have done it sort of in isolation, sort of at a distance as well as in person.
mhm.
Everything from pub quizzes and virtual classes and workshops. I mean, one of the joys of lockdown is that we've been able to train and work with and attend classes with practitioners from all over the world. I feel like that's been an absolute gift, and to
Yes,
be
it
able to
has.
do
Yeah.
trainings without having to
Mm,
pay for the travel and the
that's right.
hotels and everything else, it's
Mm,
just opened up
mm,
this big, big door.
mm. And the frequency of it, you wait months to see some of the international teachers, but now just log on to Zoom. They're there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, technology used mindfully and in this very deliberate way has been very, very helpful. Um, just before my dad passed in 2017, we also adopted a rescue dog from Cyprus,
Ah.
who was a lifeline then and was also a lifeline through this period of lockdown.
Mm,
Just again, he's such a mindful reminder in so many ways. Every day, just take him out for a walk a few times a day.
mm,
Dogs are really mindful as well, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but he reminds me all the time to let things go because they just forget. If he gets stressed or he gets angry, it's over in a minute. It's over in that
mm,
instant, and then he
mm,
doesn't dwell on it. He shakes it off literally, and sort of we as humans, we allow these sort of thoughts and loops of belief systems just keep circling through again and again and again.
mm.
And it keeps us up at night, which is a big problem for many of us.
That's
It
right. Yeah.
stops us from focusing, when you're working and you've got this sort of unhelpful train of thought going on. So he reminds me with how quickly he can shake things off as well, that, this isn't permanent and, you know, as as much as it's difficult to not be in physical connection with, beloved family members and friends, if keeping apart from them is how to keep them safe, then of course that's what we've got to do
Absolutely.
until a solution is found. And
Yeah.
it's been tough. It's been very tough. We had to reschedule a wedding 3 times. I haven't seen my mum in over a year and a half, which is a very long
Wow.
time for us.
Mm, mm.
But find a way through. Lots of talking, lots of keeping in touch and making distant plans.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So you did get managed. You got married during the lockdown, didn't you?
We did.
Yes, I've seen the beautiful pictures. I remember.
Pulled off a little town hall wedding in October with 15
Yes,
people.
amazing. Well done, you. You did
Thank
it.
you.
You
We
did
did.
it.
We'll throw the party when it's safe, but we,
Exactly. Yeah. Still
tied the
something to
knot.
look forward to, right? Yeah.
Definitely. Distant
Yeah.
plans, part of the distant planning.
Yes. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So cast your mind back to the summer last year, where unfortunately George Floyd, may he rest in peace, when he was killed, there was the Black Lives Matter protests, and lots of studios were feeling uncomfortable about the lack of diversity in the
And
studios,
posting black squares.
posting black squares. So do you recall one of two things? Do you remember getting any additional followers or approaches from studios on the back of their black squares as they were trying to diversify?
So I remember getting pulled into a lot of conversations with other people who identify as BIPOC, with the few studios that I have teaching relationships with.
Mm-hmm.
But also because I'm not black, I didn't feel like that was necessarily my space to speak about my experience as someone who was not white, but also not black.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
Mm-hmm.
in those spaces, but very conscious that I didn't want my voice to be the one that was particularly amplified. I wanted the voices of those who were black and had that experience to be front center as they should be. But in the context of sharing more information about Black Lives Matter, and then a few months later sharing more information about Stop Asian Hate in the wake
Mm-hmm.
of all the hate crimes that have been reported around the world against people who look like me,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was more sort of the point in time where I felt like, okay, my voice is the one that needs to be amplified alongside other facilitators who look like me and have been
Mm-hmm.
through similar experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that those two very, very powerful but also very sad causes that led to us being together, that it needed to take lives lost,
I
and
know. Yeah. I
someone
totally agree
happening
with
to be
you.
there to record it for us to all sort of spark this global movement. And I
Mm-hmm.
hold myself responsible alongside a lot of others in sort of not doing the work sooner, for sure. Um, I definitely I definitely felt like I had to drive a lot of those conversations as well, as uncomfortable as it was, because none of the managers I work with are non-white. And it was hard. It was hard to
Mm-hmm.
get that traction going. At the time as well, a lot of these businesses were struggling, closed, no
Yes.
people coming through the
Yes. Yeah,
doors.
yeah, because it was during lockdown still. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or on
Exactly.
and off wherever it was in the phase, there was definitely closure, open, and then closure. So
So
yeah.
it's very hard to kind of get them to focus on the viewpoints that were behind Black Lives Matter and then the viewpoints behind Stop Asian Hate when you're financially under-resourced,
Yes.
which I think is a very good point to make about wellness as in general, where,
Mm,
well, if you're not serving people who are under-resourced, you're really not serving the people who need access to these services the most.
that's right.
Because if
Yeah.
you're under resourced in whatever way, you can't then actually make change and do good.
Mm,
um
mm.
so I sorry, I digress, but
No,
that.
no, please don't apologize. And I think it was great that you were able to bring the lens of the Stop Asian Hate, because it is important that you shared your experience of that directly, because I think it's just helpful always to hear people's experiences if people are willing to share. So I just think thank you for bringing life to that. And as you say, yeah, we've all got work to do. And I just hope people continue to do that work. We're nearly a year on now, so yeah, let's see what this year brings us.
And I will say, after Black Lives Matter, I got involved in conversations and became parts of circles like the circle that we were in, Yvonne, how
Yeah,
we met
yeah,
properly.
yeah.
And it was the first time I would say in my life that I've been in sort of spaces dominated by people who identify as BIPOC. And then with Stop Asian Hate as well, led by David Cam in the UK, there was a lot of people from the Asian, East and Southeast Asian diaspora that were sort of called together around the time of Lunar New Year. And
Mm,
it was just fantastic as someone who was physically separated from my family here in the UK as well as my family around the world to
mm,
be able to come together and feel heard and seen and be able to
mm,
share experiences that I previously just didn't have people I could speak to about it.
You found a community.
Definitely.
Yeah. People
I,
who understood exactly, what the experience was. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but the
That's important.
I'm not problem, but I think the challenge that I identified from being in both these sorts of spaces is that while the involvement from those who identify as BIPOC or those who are East and Southeast Asian were fantastic, reaching beyond that community and kind of getting into the wider zeitgeist of everyone in the UK, I feel has been more challenging
Yeah,
in the sense that the
yeah,
people who want to be in the dialogue are still the people who are feeling marginalized or
yeah,
targeted or othered.
yeah,
It's not
yeah, yeah.
beyond that space yet. And I think
Mm,
it'll be interesting to see how and if it is possible to kind of reach beyond into the wider audience. And the hope is, of course, yes, but I don't know when and how that will happen.
I hear you, and this is where hopefully the ongoing work will lead to that, when maybe there's more confidence or not comfort's the right word, but yeah, probably confidence with a better understanding because you've done the work. I can now have a conversation because I may be more informed. Because if I have the conversation now, I don't feel informed. I might make a mistake. I might make it worse, and all of that. So who knows? Time will tell. Time will tell.
Definitely. I just hope we get to a place where we can all have these conversations without people immediately sort of getting triggered
Yes,
by, oh,
exactly.
of course I'm not a racist. Of course I'm not
Yeah,
sexist. Of course I'm not this or that.
exactly. Yeah, take out the defense and just have the conversation. Yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Here's hoping.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing. And now you get the opportunity to promote whatever's coming up for you in the rest of the year. Where can we find you? Where are your classes? Do you have any retreats planned? What are your plans the rest of the year?
Well, pandemic pending.
Pandemic pending, of course. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I've been running a yin yoga class for a studio called The Lodge in Southeast London for years now, but we started online, I think in April, one of the very first sort of online regular classes I was doing, and that's still going strong.
Lovely.
Monday evenings,
Mm-hmm.
when it's not a bank holiday,
Okay.
and I
What
take
time is
great
it?
7:15.
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
I take great pride in wearing my pajamas every so often and
Nice.
encouraging, yeah, the
For an
benefits of
early
practicing
night.
from
Practice with
home.
you and go to bed. Yeah.
Absolutely. I also teach a restorative hour for the lodge on Thursdays at 12. And I run a crystal bowls sound bath with the Life Centre on Sunday evenings at 8. Again, when it's
Yeah.
not bank holiday. And I'm hoping we can do sound journeys and sound baths in person ASAP because, as great as they are online, it's not the same as
Yeah, the
when you
sound.
have the vibrational frequencies in
Yeah,
person
yeah.
in the room. Don't know when I'll be back to teaching aerial yoga. I would love to do that again. But again, it depends on the pandemic and how we can
Yes. Yeah,
make
yeah.
that work safely.
Yes, indeed.
And I also run a business with my co-founder Anna called Vanna. Creatively, Valerie and Anna make Vanna.
Ah, clever.
And we're a well-being offering that is trying to be women first in what we offer. So at the moment it's all online. All our sort of self-care practices and activities are under 10 minutes in
Oh, amazing.
in acknowledgement that women historically have a time barrier to access
Mm,
well-being
poor on
activities
time.
as well.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And we're not subscription based. We're a one-off payment so that you buy and then you have your toolbox of sweaty and calming things that you can tune into. And you can also, of course, have, if you have more than 10 minutes at a time, you can just sort of stack them like Legos and
Oh,
make your
okay,
own.
excellent. So
And
what's the website for that one?
so it's wearevana, VANA.co, and you can find us on Instagram as well at we.r.vana.
Lovely. Okay. And where can we find you, Valerie Teh?
I am at Valerie.Teh, Teh, on Instagram, and my website is valerieteh.com.
Amazing. Wonderful. So before we close, is there anything you'd like to revisit? Anything you forgot to mention?
I'm sure there is, but I would love to just close with my request of the wellness industry.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to ask you. I
No,
did. So
it's
well
all
done.
good.
Well done. Well done.
Which kind of follows up with my high and low explanation of, highs and lows of working in this industry, is
Mm-hmm.
that, just be honest. If you're not the right person for someone, or if you know someone else who's a better fit, take the ego out of the equation, look at the
Yeah,
person in
yeah,
front of you,
yeah.
have compassion for them, and say, you know what, I don't know, or I'm not the best person to help you, but
Mm,
this,
mm.
it might be a better fit for you, and own up to it and trust
That's,
that
that would be so powerful.
well, there are enough people out there. There's enough of us out there, and there are
Mm,
enough sort of different problems, challenges that individuals are facing, and groups are facing,
mm,
communities are facing. If you're not
mm.
the right person, just say.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, whether you're a GP that's out of your depth, a psychotherapist that, doesn't feel comfortable in kind of guiding someone through this journey, or if your yoga practice is not the right fit for someone, it's not to turn them off yoga
Full
completely.
stop. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is to
yeah, yeah.
signpost them to
Mm,
something else or a different
mm.
style that might be a better fit for them, or to encourage them to mix and match, because there's no one panacea. As much as
No.
someone will tell you, do my method 60 minutes a day every day for the rest of your life and you'll be golden, it just doesn't exist. No. And it's always men that tell me that as well, Yvonne. It's always men who say, do my method 20 minutes a day or 60 minutes a day every day. And I'm like,
The rest of your life.
no,
Yeah.
no,
Okay. No. No.
please, no
Okay.
more.
Is there anything else I forgot to answer? I think that was the only one, probably.
No, that I just wanted to share that.
No, no,
The sort
no,
of,
absolutely. That's right. Okay. So I can see somebody's just joined us, Emia.
hello.
We are actually finishing up now, but this will be, it's being recorded, so it'll be up on the More Yoga YouTube site within a couple of days, hopefully. So just watch out for it, and you'll be able to see the whole near hour, because we've been going from since 7:30. So please do tune in, and if you have any questions from what you've seen from Valerie's wonderful interview, you can type in the comments box, and Valerie will come back to you. Because
Thank you so
we will get a
much.
message through. So thank you so much, Valerie, for joining and sharing. And I wish you the rest of the bank holiday weekend to be nice and restful, and take that with you into the short week.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. And I will just say thank you again. Yvonne was the Intelligent Rest facilitator in one of the recent trainings I was in. And your restorative poses I have been turning to as ways to rest in the middle of the day as well. So thank you so much. Thanks for all
You're
that you
very,
do.
very kind. Thank you so much.
And thank you for this space. Thanks to MoreYoga for hosting this conversation as well. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. A round of applause. Are very good with, giving us the platform. So thank you. So have a wonderful evening, everyone, or have a wonderful day wherever time you're watching. And on the 17th of May, the next yogi of color to be interviewed will be Shakalish. So watch out for that. And if you are a yogi of color or a space holder or in the wellbeing industry, we are looking for someone new to host and also to come up with, a new offering, but it's still to amplify the voices of melanated practitioners. So if you've got any ideas, please do contact Beck at MoreYoga on Instagram. Take care. See you soon. Bye bye.